In the 1950s, the simple act of a black child going to school meant walking through a gauntlet of screaming crowds and intense hostility. Mundane aspects of daily life, riding a bus, sitting at a diner, drinking from a water fountain, became heavily contested battlegrounds. To dismantle this system of segregation, hundreds of thousands of citizens mobilized across the country, organizing marches and boycotts to demand basic human equality. But this timeline presents a strange paradox. If the Civil War ended the institution of slavery and secured freedom back in 1865, why were citizens fighting these exact battles a full century later? The civil rights movement of the 1960s functioned as a desperately needed rescue mission. Activists took to the streets to secure the rights of a revolution that the United States government had actively abandoned in the 1870s. This is the Emancipation Proclamation. Issued by Abraham Lincoln, this document shifted the Civil War from a conflict strictly about preserving the Union into an active mandate to abolish slavery. And the enslaved population did not wait passively for liberation. They took up arms, joining the Union ranks in massive numbers to secure their own freedom on the battlefield. Following Lincoln's death, the federal government moved with astonishing speed. Congress passed the 13th Amendment abolishing slavery, and quickly followed it with the 14th Amendment, explicitly granting citizenship and equal protection under the law. The culmination of this era was the 15th Amendment, which officially guaranteed voting rights for black men across the country. In just 5 years, the United States rewrote its constitution to mandate racial equality. These new legal protections triggered an immediate, organized backlash. Violent white supremacist groups, most notably the Ku Klux Klan, rose up across the South to terrorize black citizens and prevent them from exercising their new rights. President Ulysses S. Grant met this violence with federal power. He created the Justice Department and deployed the U.S. military to aggressively crush white supremacist terrorism and enforce the new amendments. But as the 1870s wore on, the political tide in the North shifted. Severe economic crises and sheer political fatigue slowly eclipsed the moral imperative to protect black Southerners. The breaking point came with the Compromise of 1877. To settle a fiercely contested presidential election, the federal government struck a political deal and agreed to completely withdraw U.S. troops from the South. Without the military present to enforce federal law, the protections of the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments became functionally void overnight. Once the troops left, black Southerners were abandoned to a system of localized terror. States immediately instituted targeted voter disenfranchisement and unchecked violence to strip away political power. Economically, newly freed citizens were forced right back into the fields through sharecropping. This system trapped them in an inescapable cycle of debt and servitude. This new reality became known as Jim Crow. It was a century-long period of legalized, state-sponsored segregation and oppression that effectively replaced the institution of slavery. The United States government deliberately chose political compromise and economic convenience over its promise of equality, hitting pause on civil rights for nearly 100 years. The segregated schools and buses of the mid-20th century were not historical accidents. They were the direct, unmitigated result of the federal government's retreat in 1877. Events like the Montgomery bus boycott and the Freedom Rides were direct reactions to 80 years of unchecked Jim Crow lawlessness. Landmark court cases like Brown v. Board of Education were a delayed enforcement of the 14th Amendment, a law written nearly a century prior. Activists like Martin Luther King Jr. and Rosa Parks demanded that the United States finally honor a bounced check written in the 1860s. They stepped up to finish the revolution.